listening to She Rises, a podcast dedicated to women who are ready to stop settling and start living their lives by design. If you're ready to talk about the stuff that weighs you down and get practical advice on everything from your health, body image, spirituality, relationships, and personal growth, then you're in the right place. Hello, I'm Giovanna Capozza, your host, master coach, spiritual teacher, and mind-body expert, and I'm on a mission to unsettle women all over the world. Are you ready to rise? Hello, and welcome back to another episode of She Rises. I'm your host, Giovanna Capozza, and I'm here today with Allison Crow, your favorite life coach. And I have to tell you, I was looking forward to this interview for a few weeks now because Allison, she's a friend, she's awesome, she's a fellow coach. We're in the same community of coaches together, and her energy and her personality is contagious. Now, I will warn you, if you've got little kids in the room, you might want to put a headset on because there is going to be some language in this episode. Allison is strictly authentic and she keeps it real, and that's what I love about her. And sometimes she keeps it raunchy. Allison has been a coach professionally and successfully for over 12 years. Before that, she was a self-employed realtor and teacher. She's been studying personal development since she was 24, and her master's degree is in educational psychology from the University of Texas at Austin. Allison started her coaching career as a sales productivity coach in Texas. She quickly had so much success at the local level, she was tapped to become the first international coach of the productivity coaches in that global organization. In 2011, she left that company and created Soulful Living, her own soul-focused coaching company, where she was able to broaden the scope of her work, bring in a little woo-woo, as she would call it, and include spirituality, energetic, and creative coaching alongside with her business coaching. She is a certified visual coach, a certified expressive artist facilitator, and was a founding member of 4PC, an international organization of the top 4% of coaches and leaders in the world. Allison Crow, I am telling you, you guys are going to enjoy this episode. She is funny, she is real, and we're going to talk about bringing your creativity and your soulfulness into everything that you do, but especially for you women entrepreneurs out there. How can you create soulful success, meaning success that feels really aligned and really good at a soul level, where you feel like you're on purpose and you're bringing in your creativity in all parts of yourself? Can't wait for you guys to hear this episode. Enjoy. Hey, Allison, welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you on.
Hello. Thank you for having me. We've been planning this for a while.
We have. And I was saying in the intro that you're one of my favorite people. You're just fun and irreverent. And I said sometimes raunchy and totally authentic. So I'm excited to have this conversation and completely anticipating that I'm going to be pleasantly surprised and our audience will have just a lot of fun with this conversation.
I love it. I love being able to have the freedom to play like without this massive structure. I remember being on, Mandy Lito's Moxie cast, and she ended up calling it tapas, like little tasty bites. And so I'm sure we'll have some fun tasty bites today too.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, welcome again to the show. And you're this woman who was this powerhouse, already entrepreneur. You were like this realtor superstar. And then you left that behind to start this soulful business. And you kind of like it feels like you went from this real structured place to, as you would call it, a more woo-woo place. And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit of that story.
Yeah, let me just tap into the concise version. I mean, I've always been an overachiever. I have an excruciating need for approval and love and significance, and I still do. And so when I became a realtor, and then I very quickly became a coach for realtors, and then I became a coach for the coaches of realtors, and all that happened really fast, and I was doing really well, and I was growing and learning, and it's where I got my feet wet in the coaching world. But then after a while, my insides were I was wanting to be more me, and every time I let out a little bit more of an authentic version of me, I got my hand slapped. by the people that I worked for, right? Like, oh, I would never do that. Oh, I can't believe you did that. I remember being pulled out of a corporate party and just being shit shamed for something I said in an event. And I have the purest heart. I mean, sometimes I can be a bitch and hate people, but I I genuinely it's not like I wake up and say, "You know what? I think I'm going to really say something nasty or mean or do something to disparage." I mean, I really tried to honor this company and I loved it and I loved my clients and one day I realized this was a long process, but I wanted to do more. I wanted to be more, and even though I was an independent contractor at the time, my company kind of had some weird, they really did treat us like employees, and they kind of used the at will firing, a lot of shame tactics. And it was very strange for me because I was learning these amazing personal and spiritual growth things, but I wasn't seeing it practiced. And so it was really upsetting to my inner alignment. I don't think I knew what that was at the time, but something was so off kilter and I wanted to leave, but I was terrified. I was terrified I wouldn't make it. I was terrified my new husband would leave me. And ultimately, when I realized, so I left once and then I turned around and ran right back when they offered me a promotion. And I remember sitting in my backyard near Austin at the time, and I did a Byron Katie turnaround. I had done some that had saved my marriage. It was very early in my exposure to Byron Katie, but I was like, I just want so and so and so and so to approve of me. And I flipped that around to, oh, I can give myself the approval. Like, do I approve
Mm.
of me? And I was like, I really do like me. I'm sweet. I'm nice. I'm really good at this. I mean, like, why wouldn't they just adore me? And if they don't, this is not where it's supposed to be. So I adore me. So let's go. And so I left, and it was funny because when I left, this woman that it's one of those like soul contracts, right? So I can only thank her for the gift she is, but she was like, "Why would you leave 105,000 agents?" And I was like, first of all, I only need 7 clients. Second of all, I'm not leaving you. I'm going towards me.
Mm.
And that was a huge She Rises moment. Like,
Bam.
yeah, it was a big deal, but that was what was so big. That was so big. So this is one of the things, like, just giving a little flag here for anybody thinking about leaving. The first time I left, I was leaving them and it didn't stick and I was in fear. And the second time I was really in alignment. I knew that I could give myself on it and I was going towards myself. And there was nothing that could stop me when I was in that place.
Oh, I love it. And oh my God, there's so many nuggets in that story that I want to pull out. But like the first one that I think, a lot of women struggle with, and I myself, I'm still, recovering from this. It's that whole, like, you're too much. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you need to
Yep.
simmer down. Like, I remember when I was a kid, I used to always hear you're too much or you're too loud.
Mm-hmm.
And we learn to be ashamed of who we
Mm-hmm.
are
Yep.
and to have to simmer down and really just go with the rest of the sheeple, right? As I call them,
Yep.
and
Yep.
just become one of the sheep. And it's so detrimental and so toxic to whatever the stirring of our soul's calling is. And I see in that story how that was happening to you. And we do it. We do it out of fear. We do it because of like the job or the marriage or the whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so sad to me. And like I said, I myself am still, stepping into that spotlight in various ways, claiming that loudness or too muchness of myself.
Yeah. It's so funny, Giovanni. Even this weekend, okay, I'm sharing this here with you. Someone said you should share this on your own podcast, and I'm a little nervous to share it right now. I think I'll let some time pass. But this weekend here in Austin, I went to this gift event through this program, and there's 2 women that run it, and one of them I really resonate with, and the other one I really wanted to resonate with. And they're giving advice. I realized that I was probably a little bit more advanced for this class, and I was getting some feedback on this program that I'm doing. You talked about in the intro, you said, doing business a different way, and we can get into that. And this woman has great advice, and she has great success, and she has great thigh gap, and she has great blonde hair, and a great second apartment in downtown
Wait.
Austin.
Did you just say thigh gap? That took me a minute.
I know. I'm being a little bitchy here. I'm gonna be
I
real.
love
I wish I weren't. I want to love her, and she's not wrong. She's just not right for me. Okay. So
Right? Thigh
I
gap. I
really
don't.
don't,
I haven't had thigh gap, and I don't even since I was 2.
I know she's beautiful. She's just a few years younger than me, so I'm just acknowledging like, God, I'd love to look. I don't want that thigh gap, but I wouldn't mind having that waist. I really wouldn't mind having that belly again. I was like, I remember the time when I had a second apartment when my husband and I lived in the suburbs and we had a little condo downtown. And, that was remembering back to this time where I was making gobs of money, but I wasn't true to myself. And so she had, was trying to give me advice and she said the way I remember. So that's the other thing. I'm in the middle of this mess right now in my mindset and meaning and this need for approval being triggered and this simmer down. And this woman giving her well-meaning advice interrupted somebody who was giving me advice that really felt in alignment. And she said, "You won't." This is what I remember her saying. So I'm just acknowledging she could have said something different in my psyche, right? I mean, we do
Right.
that sometimes,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
But the way I remember it is she said, "You will never succeed at this membership program if you don't hire a professional copywriter." And my reaction to her was like, yeah, you don't know me and my audience because my audience, it like if I showed up in plastic marketing, my audience would laugh me. I mean, they
Totally.
would laugh, right? Like,
Because
me, like,
it's not you.
right. And so but here the adult in me stood up, and said, no, thank you. I'd actually like to finish hearing what she was saying. And she kind of argued back, and I was like, no, seriously, you don't know me. You're giving great advice, but you don't know me. But the 5-year-old in me, right? The 5-year-old in me was like, I can't believe you're pushing back at this woman and she's the boss and she's in charge. And, the 5-year-old in me was not comfortable. Therefore, I did not come out graceful when I was, politely declining her artificial, what I experienced. It probably was totally true for her. But I was like, oh, geez, here we are again in the spiral. Like I'm back again. And Giovanna, that was 4 days ago. I'm still like, seriously,
Well,
grow the fuck up, Allison. Like, and I'm being, I'm coaching myself and being gentle and allowing, but it's so funny how that need to fit in. And I think the larger picture is I've moved back to the city of Austin and I've made up a story that all of a sudden I'm too much again, right? The too muchness.
interesting.
That's the theme of my live event next year and we're going to have a too much party because so many of us women have been, and too much is also the same as not enough, right? Like
Totally
we're
polar
in our
opposite.
yes. So we're going to have a big too much party where everybody is going to come dressed as their too muchness, like overemphasize their too muchness, and too muchness is encouraged.
I got to be at that party. I got to find out more about that.
Yeah. No, seriously. We're going to have, my whole body just got chills. We're going to have a lot of conversations. And it came out of a gal that I was coaching live on stage at my event last year. And again, it was just like, well, I wouldn't be wearing this outfit. I'd be wearing this wild hippie skirt and these red cowboy boots and a wild yellow hat. And, but that would never go over in my neighborhood. And it was like, well, you better bring that damn outfit here next year so we can hold you. And even last week, a client from my old real estate company, she just joined the program and she was messaging me all these messages behind the scenes. And I said, sweetheart, these are all amazing things to share in the group. Why don't you share them in the group? And she goes, I don't want to be that girl I don't want to be the one in the coaching group that is too much. And
That said
I
too
said,
much or that came
yep,
across a certain way. Yep.
right. That quote, that girl. And I said, I want you to be all of who you are. There is like, bring your too muchness, right? Bring it. I welcome all of you. If you post 200 times a day in there, which she won't, but I welcome all of her. And so you're so right. Like so that's the thing, right? I have to welcome my own too muchness. I have to
Absolutely. Otherwise, we're just always being judged from the outside because there's nobody else. That's us judging ourselves.
I'm projecting. That's the thing. I'm projecting my stuff on this woman. This woman is neutral, right? She's neutral. She's neither good nor bad. She's neutral. I am not responsible for her. And so that's what I'm like just really realizing and still acknowledging the pain I felt, but realizing, oh wait, I am too much for some people. This whole fact, the way that I do business, the way that I do, it really pisses people off because I don't know why it does, but they don't seem to respond well when I tell them how I create my clients and how I get my business.
Well, the people
And
that aren't your people, right?
right,
So like
exactly.
marketing, or effective anything really, being an influencer is the ability to be polarizing, right? Like if you're
Yes,
just like wishy-washy and blending in with everybody else, yeah, you don't really get people's attention, but you are polarizing and your people love you and they love
yes,
everything that you
yes,
put out. And the people that don't, they're just not your people. And
yes,
this is one of the pieces I wanted to bring into this conversation because you do this for women entrepreneurs, and specifically you work with men as well,
yeah,
but there's this way that you help people get to their truest authentic expression and using creativity. And I wonder, could you talk up to that a little bit, and maybe you have some tips or things for our audience about how you steer people into, making peace with this too muchness. One of my favorite quotes that is, I'm quoting myself here, my clients roll their eyes every time I say it. But I believe that one of our main jobs as adults is to learn to reparent
yes,
ourselves,
yes,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. So here's what I think I'm really gifted at and how I do it. Um, One of my clients asked me yesterday, is coaching all intuition or is it like following a map? And I was like, sweetheart, at this point, for me, it's both. So here's what I'm able to do. I'm finally able to recognize I actually hear between the lines of what people say or write.
Yes.
And and so when I hear that, and certain language in a spiritual sense, so certain language, certain things they say fires off a little scene or a movie psychically in my head, and I can hear the container that needs to be created for that person within the group. So I can hear whether like they need to just be soft and held, or whether they need to be, nose to nose and face to face and chest to chest confronted. But really what it is, so it's just like this woman that messaged me, right? Is giving her permission. So when I notice even the slightest, that's a great word, the slightest,
I like it.
right? I make up my own words. When I notice them peeping out their little bits of expression, because most of my clients aren't there. If they're coming through my doors, they're not offended. They're delighted and they're curious, and so they will kind of subconsciously sneak out and like test the waters. And as soon as I energetically hear that testing, I actually invite it to come in. And so what I'm telling clients to do, and I have different ways. So I can talk about painting and stuff in a minute, but it's like, oh, really? Tell me more, right? Do you write that? Do you share that? Would you like I ask them, what do they want? How do they want to express it? And some want to express it in song, and some want to change the way they dress, and some want to. I think I might like to paint. Like I had a client last week. She was like, I'm kind of bored. We go out to my ranch every weekend, and the guys do the shooting and the hunting, and I walk through nature, but and I was like, well, what could you do if you could do anything? She's like, oh, I might like to paint. And I was like, well, let's get you some art journal stuff. That's a great thing to do while you're sitting in a cabin in the woods, right? And so what I really am somehow able to do is listen to what they're already wanting and then just give them permission and set them up to do that. And so the creativity that most people notice because it's obvious and visual is expressive arts and painting. And this was a part of my own journey in 2013 as a part of that rising up. So the first rising up of since we've what we're talking about happened in 2010. The second rising up happened in around 2012 and 13. And in 2013, I started painting, and I hadn't painted. I had drawn markers and done the corporate thing with graphic recording, but that's painting what somebody else did. And I started like June 6, 2013, and I started painting.
I
And
love that. And I want to interject there for 1 second
yeah,
because I've always known you as a coach and an artist. It's been a couple of years now, and I watch you do what you do, which for when we have these events twice a year with Rich Litvin. they're public intensives, and you provide the art, and you basically kind of storyboard
Mm-hmm.
the weekend, which is like, I just, sometimes I'm mesmerized. I just watch you do it. And to me, this is something you've been doing since birth. It's kind of like when you see a really amazing singer. So can you backtrack a little bit into like how your creativity started? Because it sounds like even before you were painting, you were doing this artwork.
Well, right. Obviously, as a kid, I mean, I taught kindergarten for a couple years, and every single one of those 5-year-olds comes into the class as an artist. And I switched from teaching kindergarten to being a technology coordinator for this school. So I taught all grades K through 8. And I did my own little tiny population scientific study of how the children saw themselves as artists. And and by second grade, like in kindergarten and first grade, they all saw themselves as artists, boys and girls. By third or fourth grade, most of the girls started falling off. By fifth grade, there were no girls left that saw themselves as artists, and by seventh, eighth grade, there was one or two that saw themselves as artists, and they were always boys that were doing
Wow.
like graphic novels. Now, granted, this is a very small population, but this was just I started noticing that. Wow, what happens? Who knew that 10 years later, like I would realize that somewhere along the way I had shut off my artistic thing. So I was coaching and training in real estate, and I just couldn't handle the four colors in the dry erase boards. And so like I had a dry erase markers that were like 16 colors, and it started there. And I would just be taking notes and facilitating. And thanks to this glorious thing we have called the interwebs, I realized that there was actually this business called graphic facilitation and graphic recording that I was already doing. And I ran out to Victoria, Canada on a weekend, and I got trained with a woman named Christina Merkley. I think that's her name. And it put a few pieces together. It helped me. It's like maybe a layperson photographer going and learning a few more things. And I immediately went home and got my first $9,000 gig. So there was some training involved, and there's certain, I've trained myself to write a certain way, and I use certain tools. So that's the thing, is people see that and they see magic, and I see that and I see structure and tools and rules.
Right. Well,
It
tell us,
looks like magic.
I'm curious, because I'm curious with that, informal little study that you just mentioned, because I grew up very much with the mantra of, well, I'm not creative. I'm not creative. And I realized as I got into my 20s that was total BS. I started getting into performing. I started getting into, doing some improv. Now I've picked up painting, which I just
Mhm.
spontaneously decided to do even just a couple of weekends ago. And I'm like, I
Good.
love this. This is like amazing. It's like meditation. I love it. But I grew up that way. And it's interesting when you talked about your observations in school. Why do you think that happens? Why do we drop this?
Here's why it happened. So there was a little boy named Renee when I taught kindergarten. He was in my first class. These kids are 25 now. Renee drew with only a turquoise crayon. Everything he did with in art and with crayons. So like we have a little color time for 30 minutes every single day where the kids just free colored, and everything was turquoise. And the well-meaning teacher that was my co-teacher said, Renee, sunshines aren't turquoise. They're yellow or orange.
Oh.
That's why. And I saw that and I was like, no, Renee's like, here I am, the new teacher, and she's been teaching for 30 years. And I think people mean well, but there's so many ways that people tell us that our version of it's the too muchness, right? Like, oh, it's too much to have a turquoise sun. And I could see that little boy's soul was just lost.
Oh,
Um,
that's so sad,
and
because it's
and
like sticking to some kind of rules that someone made up, like, and it just zaps it right out of
Well,
them.
it does, and it happens. So whether they're being artistic in school, you know, one of the things I've heard from so two kinds of women come to my painting retreats. Half of them are usually women who haven't painted since they were in grade school, and it usually starts in grade school, like when some teacher tells them that's not good enough. And then the other half are grown women who have art degrees and their professors said it was wrong or that they had to follow a certain rule, or you're taught all these rules, but nobody gives us. It's the same thing in business. I think it's good to learn some of the business structures and then break them,
Right.
right? Like that's the whole point. So I'm not saying don't learn light and balance and contrast and coordinating colors and all these other elements, but that's what's so beautiful about being a non-trained artist, um, is that I just, at this point, I just don't give a fuck. I want to paint what feels good. And so process painting is very different from performance painting. And process creativity, when you see these little cute little kids like dancing, right? Their parents are videotaping them dancing and they're just moving to the music, or little kids that create art just with a blank page and their crayons. They are process painting. They are not going, oh, well, my tree's not tall enough and my sun is not yellow. They're not critical. And so the critic just comes out of the woodwork when we judge ourselves in our creativity, whether it's writing or dancing or singing or painting or cooking, or cooking is creativity, and I judge myself like crazy in that creative expression. And then that's so amazing, Giovanna, because as I'm sitting here, like I'm realizing the connection to business too, is we don't give ourselves permission to create because we're so afraid of doing it wrong. And maybe we're not even afraid of the world's judgment, but we haven't learned how to soften and be tender and be present with our own judgment of ourselves.
Well, I'm
We
glad you segued into that, because I wanted to go there next. I wanted to go to how do we apply all of this to our businesses, because that's one of your strong suits and your forte. Because I mean, the way I see art, and that story of that little boy just breaks my heart, because because I can put myself in that too. And then what happens is that outer voice of the teacher or the parent or whoever it is that's asking you to color in the lines then becomes your inner voice. And then we just do this to ourselves throughout life. And I still very much struggle with the like perfectionist. It's got to be right. And am I doing this right? And, am I going to be wrong? And one of your gifts that I've seen is bringing this creative self-expression into entrepreneurship. And I wonder if you could speak to that a little bit.
Well, I realized the first time I realized, I was on a panel of productivity coaches at my company. So I was the first productivity coach, and a very, very financially lucrative for myself and my company. Productivity coaches coached new realtors into production. And I was on this, we'd have these 4 or 5 conferences a year, and I was on this panel, and I don't even remember how it came up, but at some point on that panel, I mentioned my struggle um, with depression, chemical depression, not circumstantial, but just it's hereditary. It runs through my family. We are all low on serotonin. and I remember that. And I kind of let it, here I am in my black suit and my slick, cute, super blonded hair, and I 4-inch heels and very sophisticated. And I let out this tiny little subtle burp
Of
of
vulnerability.
vulnerability, right? Because you didn't do vulnerability. This was probably in 2008, 2009.
Yeah. Even now,
And
it's not very corporate, is it? It's not very
right,
business-like.
exactly. But here's what happened afterwards. I had a line of 100 people waiting in line to talk to me like I was some celebrity. And they were all the other coaches in the company, and they were saying, me too, me too, me too. And it's interesting, right? Because so many people I know that are in the helping services professions and coaching and counseling and therapy and helping, we're very sensitive.
Mm.
And that's one of the reasons we're so good at it, right? And and so I actually got a whole bunch of clients that weekend, not to mention just a whole bunch of tender hearts just saying, thank you for sharing. Nobody's ever given me permission to be successful and struggle with chronic depression too. And then I was talking with the leader of this organization at the time, and she just looked at me in her, $4,000 suit. I wish I could remember the name of the brand, like in her, just her fanciness and in the piousness of her beautiful office. And she goes, I would never have shared that kind of personal information. It was very clear that she was
Wow.
saying you should never have, like, how dare you embarrass the company? And I was like, but did you see the connection it created? Like, and that was my thing. That was one of the reasons I was so successful as a coach. It wasn't because I said, how many calls did you make, and shit shamed you if you didn't make them. I don't do accountability. People ask me that all the time. I'm like, I am not your damn accountability coach. Your heart and your pillow at night and your bank account are accountability, not my
Mm.
shame. And so I realized, oh, wait a minute. The more I share, and me too, it grew just a little bit, little bit, little bit. And then when I left that, right, obviously I was able to start having a little bit more foul language. And I love the word fuck. I think fuck is one of the best words. I'm not a big fan of like
It's
fuck
so
you,
gratifying, isn't it?
but it is. And it just, especially as I'm such a nice girl and I behave for so long. And so it's just so fun to embrace my foul language. And I grew up in a family that cusses, and
And you're
my
from
husband,
Texas, damn it.
yes, fucking cowgirl. And it's so funny because as I was crossing over, right, like I wish I could just show, it's like the visual of Allison growing and the old tribe is leaving and the new tribe is coming. There are so many people would say that fuck is not professional. I'm like, oh, well, tell that to Nadine Larder, because Nadine Larder paid me $7,000. And she said, the reason I hired you is because you had fuck on your homepage, which I don't think I have it on my homepage now, but I had on my website, and this was the defensive version of me, right? So I'm much more in an allowing place. But at the time, it's like I had to defend my authenticity. And so I would, the rebel in me would put the F word, and I would put typos on the front page, because if somebody sent me one of those fucking you have a typo emails, they were not my client.
Oh, I get those all the time. I've had people correct me even on Facebook.
Right. Well, and I know they mean well, but
Yeah.
geez, I'm not in graduate school anymore. I don't need your red pen in my life. And if you can't overlook that. So then I learned, oh, wait, this is actually, so I was saying with my clients, your problem is your best marketing. Right. And so what I loved was that people who don't like someone who types so fast and hits publish before reviewing, they're not my people. People who can't handle. So I love, this is what's so fun. Varian Brandon doesn't cuss. She never has cussed. She is hardcore Christian, and she's one of my best friends and was a very good and very well high paying client for a long time. And what I love about Varian is that Varian allows me to be me and doesn't need me to be like her. That's a whole different
Mm.
story. But right, most people aren't able to do that. Most people only want to hang around with permission people who they're exactly like. And so I started experimenting, and I started, thinking, well, why do I dry my hair straight? What if I let it go curly? And well, I like to wear jeans on stage. I don't wear dresses very well. And, I started thinking, what do I really like? Because I had only lived the way I thought I was supposed to. And so then the creativity came out, the same things. It's like, not what should I paint? What do I want to paint? What do I want to paint? And then I spent a year, last year, I spent a year actually getting trained in expressive arts. And I remember signing up with a woman, and I was like, I really don't need the certification. I just want to come hang with the old ladies in the woods and paint all year long. And I remember looking up in one of the circles going, holy shit, this is deep. This is the deepest work I've ever done. Like the deepest personal work. This is like painting therapy. And, they don't technically call it therapy, but it was so healing, because we actually, in the way they do it, you paint on paper and you paint with cheap paint, and everything gets thrown away. So you're not attached to,
To what you
$100 canvas.
create.
Yes. And so
Yeah.
that's the whole point, is like and there is no right and there is no wrong. The only thing that's right is painting what you feel. And if you feel like painting a giant vagina, beating a penis to smithereens, or, I mean, I painted some of my darkest paintings. I painted this giant green penis monster. That was the too much penis. Oh my gosh, I'll have to share it with you. I'm serious.
You got to
On your
send that to me. We'll put it somewhere in the show notes for sure.
between the giant, and I didn't say I think I want to paint a green penis. I just started painting this giant shape, and I realized, I was like, oh my gosh, it's this giant way that, and not obviously not all males like this, but in my life, that so many men have told me I was too much. So many people have told me I was too much, and I just let all that come out on the canvas. And then I painted the little girl under there. I'll have to send that to you. And then there was another one where I painted this happy little girl, and then next thing I know, I'm painting her going down into the underworld. And the process of this, like these two, like the outside person can actually see the story, so they're good examples. But so many of my paintings, you couldn't see anything, but they were so cathartic because I was able to take this happy little girl and go down into the depths of death. And as she went down, the voices that tell us all, you better not go here. You'll die if you feel this pain.
I think I've seen that one. I
Yeah,
think that's pretty powerful.
well, and if you really get into it and look into it, all of us have those voices that have not just stifled our creativity, but they've stifled our I amness. We've forgotten who we are. And so when we can actually, what I learned through this is looking at the shadow and sitting with your dad, maybe saying, stop that crying bullshit, you're too much. And I could push that down, depress it down for years. But as I began to sit and learn how to hold the shadow through creativity without needing it to look good, all of a sudden, well, let me, not all of a sudden, over time, I wish it was all of a sudden, over time, right, that pain became bearable. And I saw that my heart could hold it all. And I don't need to run from the shadow, which gives me permission to be more freaky and creative.
Well, and I want to link that to, I want to link everything that you just shared there for the audience, because what I see time and time again, both in my own business and with other people, and especially with the people that are in your community, who I know many of them, and yourself, is this link between vulnerability and creativity and your business.
Right.
And there's no more like the mechanical, start your business and this is how you market to people. And like, here's the formula. Like, that's out the window. Now your authenticity and your vulnerability needs to come through in who you are. And what I'm hearing you really share is that your creative artistic expression has actually been the thing that's helped you get even more authentic with yourself. And then, obviously with your audience.
Well, it's fun because I haven't been painting lately, right? So I was painting prolifically every single day, huge paintings. And as that's come to the surface, I still have little ways that I'm creative, but I'm creating in a different way. But what it does do is gives me permission to learn in front of people. And this is one of the business things that I encourage people to do, right? Because a lot of us don't want to release something in the world until we're perfectionist. And like you, my podcast is relatively new. And I have experimented with some different, but that's the thing. I didn't wait until it was perfect, until I was an expert at podcasting. I decided to give it a go and make a commitment to it. And I told people I'm gonna, I changed formats. I started out sharing audios of these live classes that we would do. And then I was like, yeah, that's not really working. So I've switched to more traditional podcasting, and I'm learning in front of people. And one of my friends that listens to my podcast, she was like, your most recent episode, the audio was so good. You were spot on. Your pacing was wonderful. And I was like, hey, thanks for listening. And she's like, I'm not listening because you're a friend. I'm listening because they're good. And it just, here I am 10 months in, and I'm just now getting good. And I had to let myself be wobbly. And
Well,
so
there's something liberating about that when you can just let yourself be a novice and not care about being perfect.
exactly. So here's the thing. It's easy for us to say that as teachers and leaders, right? But what I never had, Giovanna, was a teacher that modeled it. So I always tell my clients, I lead from within the circle. I don't lead from the pulpit. I'm holding your hand and I am only one toe in front of you.
Yes.
Because that's the one thing I still have a hard time finding women. I can find men who have done it, but I am craving the fierce feminine that is authentic and willing to screw up. And I don't know if I can't speak for men, but I know us women sometimes, God, we want to get it perfect. We want to look good. We want to be
Oh, I
right. We want to
suffer
be
from that
loved.
disease, girl. I hear
Yes,
you.
I still do. And so my antidote to that disease is saying fuck it. It's so funny. You asked me to wear the tutu on the show today. And yesterday I was wearing it I actually put something on Facebook. This is so funny. I put something on Facebook and somewhere and there was a request for a tutu, and a client sent me 3 tutus, a pink one, a yellow one for my branding color, and then a rainbow light up one. And yesterday I was so heavy with this interaction I had with this woman, and from coaching myself over it, I heard my guide say, just lighten the fuck up and be like a child. Like, do you know how children get over their drama so quickly? I was like, just forget about it. And so I knew I was going to go to the gym, and I was like, I'm wearing my tutu today. And my husband looks at me and goes, I am not being seen in public with you. And I said, oh, yes, you are. I had more fun. I wore that thing around the neighborhood. I wore that thing into the pizza joint for lunch. I wore that at the Gold's Gym.
I have to
I
tell
put
you,
it
it was
on
the
Facebook.
highlight of my morning scrolling down Instagram this morning and seeing you in the gym doing whatever you were doing with those ropes with this yellow tutu on. And I was just like, what in the hell is she doing? And it just brought a smile to my face.
My big old gut, like I'm not CrossFit lady. I've got middle-aged bigness because my body needed to grow into the size that my soul wanted. My body doesn't want thigh gap. My body is luscious and needs to hold all of who I am. And
I love
and
it.
yes, but that's what was so fun. It was like, and it it was just I wouldn't be surprised. The girl that actually sent them to me, she was like, this is my business coach. And that's what she shared, right? She's like, y'all, this is my business coach, not some fancy smancy thing. And so I just realized, we always hear fly your freak flag. And the thing is, we're not freaks. We're actually free. We are
Mm.
actually we are actually not insane. My husband loves to sweetly say, you're insane. And I'm like, yes, baby, I am. And that's why you married me. And it's so true. Like by the end of the day, so I made the mistake of buying this sequin sweater off Instagram. Ladies, do not buy clothes from Instagram, especially if they're from China, because their size totally wrong.
I
So
just bought something this morning. Hang on a second. You're freaking me out. Not a sequins t-shirt, though. It was just a regular t-shirt.
This was so cute. It was like cute little boyfriend jeans. And then you got real casual bottom, but then there's like this sequined sweater top that hangs off the shoulder. And I was like, I could totally rock that. So I order extra large just because my boobs are really, they don't go out, but I'm just wide around the middle these days. That whole growing into my woman body thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I came home, I'm wearing my tutu, and there's the gold sequin thing. And I put it on and it looks like I'm wearing a little half tight football shirt, like, right up under the boobs. So I'm going to give it to my niece, but clearly clothing that is made in China that is size extra large, the sizing was all wrong.
Right.
But I put it on and I'm like, how about this, babe? Let's go out in public like this. And he goes, whatever. But I could see his delight in it, right? Like my husband is the good example of like everything has to look good and not be embarrassing. And yet at the end of the day,
he married you.
Still, right. Yeah. Well, that's the thing is, and I remember asking him one time, I was like, why did you marry me? You're so critical. And he said, I love all that weird shit you do.
Well, because don't you think it liberates him too? Like when you see someone else, like you said, flying their freak flag, it liberates that thing inside of you that's like, oh, I can just be freaky too. Yeah.
Exactly. So he is the personification of most of us because most of us just want permission to be our weird selves. I mean, here's the thing. What grown women, you and I are close in age. I remember the tutu thing. So when we were little, we didn't have costumes. If we had a costume, it was because our mother or grandmother made it for us. So they didn't have costumes at Toys R Us for us, right? They had those like plastic
you put them together yourself,
right?
With like leg warmers and whatever you have at home.
So when I was about 26 or 7, I was in Chicago and I walked around the corner at FAO Schwartz. And I mean, I'm a grown woman. I walk around the corner and there are tutus there and there are dress up clothes that are like, they were just so fancy. They weren't plastic. And I started crying. I just had this moment of somehow my little girlness got lost. And I blew that off and went on. It was this sweet little tender moment. And when my nieces were born and they're now 14 or 15, there were so many little things that we didn't have that and I didn't get that. And then so it's like, you know what? I want a tutu. I think I want a tutu. And if I really didn't care, maybe I'd run around like one of these cute little kids that we see. She's got on her tights and she's got on her tutu and she's got on her cowgirl boots and she's just being expressive. And yesterday wearing that tutu, I'm going to start wearing my tutu a lot more. And I'm definitely always wearing it to the gym because but that's the thing. What would you wear, Giovanna, if nobody were judging you and you wanted to feel fun and playful? Maybe it's not a tutu or maybe it's a low cut and show your boobs dress but that's the thing is there's so many ways people have told us we're wrong.
Well, it's true. And because I'm confessing that I still suffer from that. Like how does my physical appearance look? Like I obsess about the extra weight that I put on and that I don't have thigh gap and that, and all of these things. And actually it's really funny that we're talking about this because My Course in Miracles teacher, who I follow on Facebook, yesterday she posted this amazing meme, and it said, "Mother Teresa didn't give a shit about the size of her thighs. She had shit to do."
Yes,
I
it's so
loved it
true.
because, but it speaks to this whole, if you could liberate yourself from what other people think of you and the judgments you have about yourself, how much more successful can you be in your life or your business or your relationship or just in being you, whether you're,
Right.
a stay-at-home mom or whatever. Yeah.
Well, and then there's this place, right, like where I've gone from defending it. And for a while, like even with my body, I would defend to my husband. He was like, I just want you to take care of yourself. And I'm like, I'm doing good work. Don't worry about my body. And then actually through this art process, I got a message that said walk or die. And it was almost a year ago. So it was in November of 2016. And so I started walking. And mind you, I have become, I used to be an athlete and I had become very sedentary and behind the computer. And my depression was really heavy and my body was at an all time heaviness. And I was fine with my body the way it was looking. I wasn't fine with the way it was feeling. And so I started walking. And my first walk was, just around my backyard. And I walked around my backyard. I had a little Fitbit and I made myself do, I think, 2,000 steps, which is barely a mile. And it nearly killed me. And my husband, meaning well, because he loves me and he actually, after in his first marriage, had gotten really fat. He stays in shape. He's not obsessive about it. He's actually very moderate and healthy about it. But he's like, Allison, you could do this. You could move your body and kind of should come to the gym with me. And always very supportive with a little bit of a nudge. But I was like, no, I'm doing it my way. I'm doing it my way. Um, and it's interesting because I've been walking almost every single day for a year, and now I walk much further, and I've gradually and slowly shed 10 pounds. And
Amazing.
I'm not trying to lose weight, but that's the thing. There's so many ways we're told this is how you have to do. And I've started to listen. So as I go through these processes and as I let myself be, and when I stop defending it, I can trust, well, this is my way to nurture my body. And the focus is on, for me, moving, and my depression is actually gone. I have not had a depression. I have not been depressed since I started walking. It's unreal. And it's the same thing in business, right? It's like I know what they do at boot camp. I know how to do my diet. I know all those rules, right? I took the weightlifting classes in college. You and I both know that there's 1,000 ways. And so it's great. We know those ways. But then what we can do is we can slow down and listen to the wisdom within, listen to our
Yes.
guides. And my guides said, walk. They didn't say join a class or do a diet. And then they brought me someone that helped me. This was so beautiful. I texted my colleague Janelle Cobb, who was also a client of mine at the time, and she's a big food expert and has gone through adrenal fatigue. And I was like, hey, I think I want to do a cleanse. And she said, call me right now. Do not do a cleanse. And what was so beautiful is she
Especially not
listened.
if you have adrenal fatigue, people.
Well, yeah, yes, exactly. But
Do not do a cleanse.
the other thing she noticed about me personally is she noticed that my psyche doesn't do denial. I don't do takeaway. I do better moving towards pleasure than you taking something away. And she said that'll never work. And she gave me 5 things to add to my diet. So protein, I have protein in the morning. I have a green juice every day. I don't make it. She gave me the names of a couple that I could buy and I just stock up. And there's a few other little minor, they're just these little tiny adds to my life. Is it making a drastic change overnight? But in a year of doing these gentle practices, right? Just like a spiritual practice. And what is it? There's the physics, quantum physics.
Mm-hmm.
It's frequency over intensity. And so if we frequently can eke out an authentic version of ourselves, it's so much better and so much healthier. And so it creates
And
more
so
movement and more
healing.
change. Yes. Than it does if we just show up one day and we fly our freak flag, right? If we just, and then next thing you know, that's just like the weight going off. I look up and I go in to buy a pair of jeans and the woman says, you are not a size 12 anymore, you're a size 8. And I'm like, no way, I'm a size 12. I've been a size 12 for like 5 years. My 8 days are over. And she goes, honey, these 10s are too big for you. You need a size 8. And it was so funny because I wasn't even trying to get down a size, and I'm certainly not glorifying that, but it was an interesting surprise to me that frequency over intensity. And it's the same thing in business. When people ask me, Allison, how year after year after year after year have you managed 6 figures and to net as much as the $1 million coaches do, and have fun and do all this other stuff? And it's frequency over intensity. And by all means, I'm not the most disciplined person, but it is showing up in that creative expression.
With your tutu.
With my tutu. It is. And when I say creative, it's so funny because we think that that means all the colors, right? For me, creativity is the expression. The markers or the pens or the tutu might be the expressive tool, right? Do you get the difference?
Totally get the difference. Yeah.
Showing up in the expression of who I am and what I'm feeling today has created the audience that when I do make an invitation or an offer that says me, 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 me. And so, yes, that is what I try to teach people to do is, what do you really want? If you could express anything, what would it be? And as they begin to get comfortable doing that, they start to see some traction. We add a little bit of, I think, I know you do some sales training too. I've heard you teach your sales sandwich a couple times, right? And I have this really thick sales background and handling objections and language and all these other things that I'm able to help somebody put on top of that expression where we can tweak their skills. So it's like skills plus your authentic self is unstoppable.
Well, I love that. And that just feels like it's I feel like that you just summed up the entire show there, right? Like your skills, the repetition, the slow and steady, but bringing in your authenticity. And of course, from everything that you shared, this creativity, like that's a perfect wrap right there, is to like wrap up the whole show and like just a little bow. Allison, if you could leave us with just one more tip, something practical that people listening can take away, whether it's, to apply in their business or to apply in their personal lives around what we've talked about, what would be that one thing?
I think the one thing would be, so you said practical. I'm gonna say, if I were you, I would journal every single day and write a list of your I ams. And when I say I am, I mean capital I am. So like, I am divine, I am wild, I am flow, I am magic, I am able, I am creative, I am learning, because we forget who we are. And I want you to remember, but I don't want you just to keep it in your head. There is something about getting that expression out. And so that's what I would say is make a list of at least 20 I ams with pen and paper every single day.
I love that. It's a great reminder. And fly your freak flag, right? And get creative. And it's that, again, that parenting of that inner child that never got to be creative or was put down for her creativity or her loudness or her whatever it is. And really starting to nurture that, because that'll benefit you in all areas of your life. I love it. Allison, I loved having you on this show. It was so much fun to have this conversation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and keep rising, everyone. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure you head over to SheRisesPodcast.com, and I'll see you there. If you've enjoyed today's episode, make sure you tune back in next week when I dive into more juicy topics to help make your life the best it can be. And hey, if you've enjoyed listening to the show and you love it, head on over to iTunes and leave me a rate and review and subscribe there to the show.